Hello everybody. So I'm making this video to document my progress trading options with a strategy that I haven't seen anyone else doing, at least not deliberately in the way that I'm doing it. So before I go any further, I need to say that I'm not going to be going over what option trading is. I'll include a link in the description to a playlist from My Life of Learning, which is a just really great channel. This playlist, he'll explain the basics. So if you don't know what options are or how they work, watch these videos first. Otherwise, nothing I say here is going to make any sense to you. So the strategy that I'm doing. So the strategy itself kind of came into being as I was building this Excel spreadsheet that you see here that I've been using to track my trades. So keep in mind, I've only been doing this strategy over the course of the last month and a half. When I first started, I was looking at just doing a straight wheel strategy as described by Marcus Heitkoetter and Randy from the My Life of Learning channel, who were just two YouTubers that got me into the idea of trading options in the first place. So whenever I was making this tracker, one of the columns I decided to make was to have Excel math out what my annualized return on investment, or ROI, would be. So basically, it would look at what my ROI for a particular trade was, divide it by the number of days that I was in a trade for, and then multiply it by 365. So I pretty quickly came to the realization that if a stock moved in a direction I wanted it to and I closed the trade out early, that annualized ROI pretty much always ended up going up, sometimes like quite dramatically, which brought me to a little thought experiment of which would be better, getting a 1% return every 7 days or a 3% return every 30 days. Obviously, the smaller return with a greater frequency would over time lead to a better result, especially whenever you factor in the concept of compounding interest. So here's a little simulation I put together so you can see the difference between those two scenarios. So here you have each one starting balance of $1,000, which I did just to make this simple. So first one, return of 1% every 7 days. That would give you 52 trades per year. And then Excel, it's the little FV function here, figured out that that would end up resulting in an ending balance of that at the end of the year. Over here, going with 3% every 30 days, you'd get 12 trades in a year. You'd end up with that balance. So still really good, but this one nets you an additional $251 in this little simulation. So this is, smaller. We're going to be, ultimately dealing with bigger numbers, but you can see how this concept plays out. So let me bring up some actual trades that I did here, so you can see how I've been employing this. So here's some trades I did on ticker symbol METC. So you can see here on January 23rd, I sold the $17 put option that was expiring on February 16th for 56 cents. Had I held that option to expiration, it would have expired worthless and netted me the full $56 because the stock ended up closing higher than $17. So that would have represented a 3.25% ROI with a 47% annualized ROI over the course of those 25 days. Instead, though, the stock went up pretty quickly after I entered, and the option had dropped in value by about 50% just the week after I'd entered the position. So I bought to close at 25 cents, which freed up that capital to enter a different position and ended up netting me a 1.78% ROI, down from the 3.25% ROI, but it increased my annualized ROI from 47% all the way up to 72%, and it did it in 8 days. So plugging those little numbers into the simulator here, see how that pans out. Now, I rounded down on the number of theoretical trades you'd be able to take in each scenario, but that's not super important. It's close enough. But just looking at it, you can see there's a pretty significant advantage to closing this out quicker at a lower ROI than holding it until expiration at the higher return on investment for the actual trade. Pretty big difference there. It's an extra $647. So that's the concept. So going back to the trades that I did here, you can see that after I closed that out, a few days later, I did the same thing. I sold a $16 put on February 9th and then bought it back on February 13th, which increased my annualized ROI from an already really good 112% all the way up to 156% and allowed me to enter another trade, which ended up just being another METC trade that you can see here that I'm in right now. Haven't closed it out, so that's still sitting there. If this option goes all the way to expiration, I'm right now looking at a 38% annualized ROI. So I'm hoping that METC will, quickly rise in value in the next week or so that I can close it out early and end up pulling in something closer to 100 to 150% annualized ROI. So one other thing that I want to point out here is that by closing these trades early, there's kind of a little secondary function of it just locks in a win for that trade. Just in case the stock, were to have a really bad earnings report or something that causes it to decrease in value sharply. So how has this been panning out over the last 6 weeks? Here's a nice little pivot table I made to show just that. So looking at this, the actual dollar amount here isn't really as important as the ROI. This ROI is it's a calculation of starting with $9,000, I pull down this much, which is 4.06%. So you can just see how much my account is growing over the course of that week. If you look at the first week, though, you'll notice that my starting account balance was $9,000, but the ROI was really high. The reason for that is that I didn't have any open positions whenever I started, and I was just quickly committing all those funds to trading, so I got a lot of option premium just right off the bat that week. I'd say it wasn't until about the fourth week that I'd finished transferring my entire account from my previous broker that was just not allowing me to trade options over to my current broker. Right now I'm working with Schwab. Hence the $5,000 to $6,000 jumps in the account balance over the course of the first few weeks. That was just me gradually transferring assets over. So that said, I was probably around the third, maybe fourth week that things started settling into what I think will be a bit more typical as far as the churn of opening and closing positions with this strategy. So last week was a bit of a slower week, which was reflected in that much lower ROI, but that's going to be counterbalanced next week with quite a bit of option premium right out of the gate, as I had 8 contracts expire this last Friday, so I have a lot of premium to work with. Of those 8 contracts that expired, one of them was a covered call that I closed for a pretty nice profit, which will end up just granting me more capital to work with next week. So my expectation is that next week's ROI will be somewhere between 3 to 5%, but we'll see. So we're going to come over here and actually look at some of the trades that I've closed. So now that you understand the methodology of what I'm doing here, here are all the trades that I've closed out since starting this strategy. Not a ton, but a fair amount. Important columns to pay attention to here are going to be the entry date right there, the expiration date, and then whenever I actually exited. You'll notice in almost every case looking over here, the annualized ROI is very, very good. Options that I closed out early that don't have the more stellar ROIs were options that had already exhausted most of their value, that wouldn't have had that much better of an ROI if I just let them expire. So I just closed those out early to free up the capital to make other purchases. So one of the things that I set up in this spreadsheet also is it pulls data directly from Thinkorswim, my trading platform, that'll show the current strike prices of options, and in order to calculate the annualized ROI, were I to close the trade in this moment at the current strike price. So you can see there are a few of these options that still haven't hit their expiration dates and are still pulling the strike prices. One thing to note here is that in every single case were I still in this position, I would be looking at a much smaller annualized ROI than what I achieved closing the trade early. I mean, you just look here on, well, here, let's look at this one in YOU. If I closed it today, which, you know, I can't because it's Sunday, but still, at current strike price, I'd be looking at a 7.92% annualized ROI. But because I closed it early, I ended up with a 53% ROI, which is, you know, a lot nicer. So I'm going to bring up the trades I just let expire. With the exception of this one covered call up here at the top, you'll notice that every one of these trades has like a really good annualized ROI. The price for each of them they just never moved in a way that would have allowed me to close out early for a better annualized ROI, so I just let them expire. The only cash secured put I have had filled was one that expired a couple of days ago with ticker symbol KVUE, which was a trade I entered based on a completely different strategy that I was trying out. It was based on looking at unusual option activity and trying to detect insider trading based on call put option volume. It was just a YouTube video I found talking about analyzing stuff based on that way. Thought I'd give it a shot. It didn't work out, and I wasn't able to get out of the position. I wasn't able to roll it, so it just got filled. And so now I'm going to be utilizing a wheel strategy to try to get some additional premium and hopefully still try to turn some kind of a profit. So just summing up, the strategy that I'm going with is to sell cash secured puts, generally with less than a 30% chance of being in the money, with the highest native annualized ROIs that I can find. Ideally, if the option makes it all the way to expiration, that annualized ROI will be at least 30%. Otherwise, it's just not going to be that interesting for me to enter. But then I'm going to close trades early whenever the annualized ROI is higher than what it would be if I were to just let it expire. The higher I can get that annualized ROI, the better. If it looks like an option is going to expire in the money, I just roll it out or roll it out and down, always for a credit. I'm not doing any of these for a debit, which I have rolled quite a few of them already. If it isn't possible to roll it out or down, I'll just have to do what I did with KVUE here, let it get filled, and then sell covered calls against it until I can get out of the position. I really want to hold actual equities for as short of a period of time as possible, just because it's very difficult to increase the annualized ROI in the same way that I could with cash secured puts. So that is the strategy. Not sure how often I'm going to be posting these videos. I'm going to shoot to kind of do like an end of the week recap ideally every week, but you know, who knows, it may be every few weeks, I don't know, but we'll see what happens. So that's all I've really got. So y'all take it easy, and thanks for listening.